Hello and welcome to this training from Binges to Balance. I'm Dr. Lara Zibarras and I am so excited to be sharing with you today the 3-step plan to finally end that eating chaos and get your act together around food. I'd love to know where you're dialing in from. I am speaking to you from London. Hello and welcome. Now, I know you're here for a reason today, and I'm going to hazard a guess that there may be a few reasons why you decided to hop on this training. I bet you're someone who would love to be able to eat just 2 cookies or maybe just 2 squares of chocolate and put it away, no spiral, no out of control eating, no guilt, no regret. Am I right? Maybe you would absolutely love to be able to walk past chocolate in your cupboard without it calling your name, and to trust yourself enough to be able to have so-called binge foods in the house and not be afraid of them anymore. And I bet you'd love to be able to sit down to dinner feeling like calm and in control, present with your family or your friends. How good would that be? And I bet you're also absolutely tired of lying in bed at night with a full stomach, distended stomach, and head spinning with shame. How amazing would it be to just go to sleep without replaying what you ate that day? Give me a hell yeah in the comments if any of that resonates with you, if any of those feel like something you would love to be able to do. Now, I want you to also give me a yes if any of these things sound like you. So are you someone who maybe eats really healthy all day? You're making the healthy food choices, you're having salads for lunch, maybe a smoothie for breakfast. But when it comes to the evening, it's almost like something snaps inside and you find yourself standing in front of the fridge, like grazing, eating anything you can get your hands on. I've been there myself, so I absolutely know what that's like. And I bet you've done it all. I bet you've tried every single diet under the sun. You've tried keto, you've tried calorie tracking, you've tried the celebrity fad diets. Maybe you've even tried those tricks like chewing gum or brushing your teeth so that you're not tempted to eat more food. But honestly, nothing ever stops the binges for good. And sometimes these things might work for a little bit, but at some point you're coming back to that binging cycle again. And maybe you're someone who has got to the point where you're even hiding wrappers from your friends and family. You have the snacks, or you go out to buy the snack food and then you're literally chucking it in the bin so that no one else can really know what's going on for you. So that kind of secret eating. And I bet you're someone who just has like one bite of that quote unquote bad food and you think, oh God, sod it, I've ruined it all. I may as well eat the whole lot. And then you eat it and you promise yourself you're going to start again tomorrow. So hands up if any of that resonates, if any of that sounds like you. Well, you see, the thing is, what most people focus on when they're trying to stop that out of control eating is they're focusing so much on what it is they're eating, maybe even how much they're eating. And possibly this is what you've done as well. But the thing is, healing a relationship with food takes so much more than just focusing on food, what you're eating, how much you're eating. It's more than having enough willpower or the right kind of discipline. For true and lasting change around food, to actually heal your relationship with food, you need to focus on more than just the food, because the binging, the overeating, the emotional eating, that out of control feeling around food, it's not just about what you eat, it's also looking at what you think and what you feel around food. And that's why when I work with people, whether that's through my one-to-one coaching or my courses, I use this really powerful blend of nutrition science. So we need the food and nutrition. That is really important. But it's also important to consider the mind-body connection and also an emotional reset to stop you binging and overeating and emotional eating for good. Now, in today's training, first of all, I want to look at some of the biggest mistakes that women make when they're trying to stop that out of control eating, when they're trying to stop binge eating, emotional eating, overeating, and crucially, why these mistakes are keeping you stuck where you are now. Then I'm going to explain why binging isn't a willpower problem. No matter what you've been told, you have probably been told time and again that it's all about willpower, it's all about discipline, and that's just not true. The next thing we're going to talk about is control, and actually how trying to control your food leads to less control and more chaos. And finally, I'm going to share with you that 3-step method. It's my food and body freedom method, and that is a practical and proven technique that has now helped hundreds of women take back control around their relationship with food, feel calm and in charge around food. But first off, I would love to introduce you and tell you a little bit about my story. So I am Dr. Lara Zibarras. I'm the food freedom psychologist. I live in London now, but actually I spent my early years growing up in Kenya. I lived there until I was 18. I've got a PhD in psychology. I'm a certified nutrition and wellness coach. I've trained in intuitive eating, and I've also got an advanced diploma in eating disorders and nutritional intervention. So I've spent many years now really training up to get to the point where I am now. And now I've worked with over 200 women globally, which is just amazing, to help them break that binge cycle and heal their relationship with food and feel in charge and confident around food. You can find me over on YouTube and also Instagram. I'm at Dr. Lara Zib on both of them. Now, this wasn't always the case for me. So my backstory is that I am a recovered binge eater, and I had a very, very complicated relationship with food for many, many years. And there was a time when food literally ruled every single part of my life. I actually spent years swinging between either these really intense diets, going on these healthy eating plans, detoxes, cleanses, on the one hand, and then on the other hand, I was very chaotic around food, binging, overeating, emotional eating. And I felt very guilty and ashamed. I was constantly obsessing about calories, about grams of fat and sugar in food. I was secretly binge eating for a period of my life. I felt very out of control. And if there was any food in the house that was a quote unquote binge food, I really couldn't have it in the house at all. I felt like it wasn't allowed to be there and I would have to eat it all. I don't know if you've been there too, but it's a horrible out of control feeling where you're constantly obsessing and thinking about food. Food is constantly on your mind, that food noise. Now, I honestly thought that the problem was me. I thought that if only I had more willpower, if only I had more discipline, if only I could try harder, if only I could find the perfect diet. I'm constantly chasing. And that's exactly what I did. I tried so many things to fix what I thought was this broken relationship with food. There were the strict plans. For a point, I was seeing a nutritionist. I was taking supplements. I was actually cutting more food out of my diet because I thought that there were issues with my digestive system. I tried willpower hacks. I read books about food addiction. And honestly, I felt like I had tried absolutely everything to the point where I really was at wit's end. And the thing is that sometimes I thought I found the answer. So for a little bit of time, maybe I did have that kind of sense of control around food, but I would always go back to the binging. And over time, I would say that probably got worse. So the more that I cut food out of my diet, the more I tried to be rigid and controlled around food, and the stronger my cravings became. And I remember this kind of rock bottom moment where I had another binge. And this time it wasn't even on anything necessarily bad. I was just eating for eating's sake. And I got to the point I was like, oh my gosh, how have I been working on this or thinking that I'm working on it for so many years and I am still here? I kept going back to the binge, the overeating, the nipping to the corner shop to buy food, especially if I didn't have it on in the house. And it felt like almost like it had become autopilot. The habit was so deeply ingrained, and I would get to the point where I'd feel so sick, stuffed, really disgusted and ashamed, and I'm constantly promising myself that I wasn't going to do it again. Like, this time it was it. This time I had the answer, things were going to change. And every single time I would come back to this place where I would feel honestly totally broken. And then one day, honestly, it hit me. I couldn't believe that I had been spending, I'm not joking, like 20 years trying to fix my broken relationship with food. And I just thought, it can't be me that's the problem, because I knew I had discipline and willpower in other areas of life. Like, I knew that I had that in spades. It can't be me that's a problem. It must be the approach that I'm taking. So all these diets and the healthy eating plans and the cleanses and the detoxes, all that skipping meals and cutting out bad food, that endless need to control food and actually almost like fear food and ignore my hunger, ironically, it was making things worse. So the issue was the approach that I was taking and not anything to do with me. So I realized I actually had to unlearn so much of what I'd been taught. And it was then that everything changed for me. See, the thing is, I was actually trained as a psychologist. So I did psychology in my undergrad, I did a master's, and I did a PhD. I studied health psychology, I'd studied eating disorders. But yet I was still struggling with food for those 20 years. And it was only when I went back to re-look at this after 20 years of trying and studied the kind of the real science behind binge eating, emotional eating, cravings and all that. I did also work with a eating disorder recovery coach as well to work on my relationship with food. And in that process of healing, that's when I then took things further and I went and trained as a nutrition coach in intuitive eating and also in eating disorders. And I realized that that's when I really, really wanted to help people that had been through the same thing that I'd been through, but crucially, hopefully, being able to help people quicker than I got help myself. And what I realized is that binging, emotional eating, overeating, that disordered relationship with food isn't so much about the food, about the behavior. It's also to do with mindset and also emotions. Because as we saw earlier, binging isn't just about what we eat, it's also about how we think and feel about food, and also how we use food as that emotional coping mechanism. So what I've done now is I've taken my experience and my lived experience, all the training and the research that I've done, and I've created this approach, the food and body freedom method, that actually works. And now, for me personally, food no longer controls me. I literally no longer have food noise. I don't really think about food. I think about food more in the context of helping others and coaching others than I do for me. I can eat and enjoy food, especially foods that I couldn't before. And then I can move on and get on with my day. I am able literally to eat 2 squares of chocolate, put the rest of the bar back in the cupboard and not think about it until a couple of days later. So there's no kind of guilt, shame, or spiraling out of control. I feel totally at peace with food. And now I've helped over 200 clients get to that same point as well. So I guide women just like you to find that same peace so that they can stop living with that food chaos, that food noise, and finally feel calm around food. And I know this works because I get feedback from my community pretty much every single day Like, for example, Yolande, who struggled with binge eating for about 20 years. She actually followed some of the most extreme diets I have ever come across, and now she's able to go weeks without binging. Georgia, this is a great example here of being able to eat and stop herself from spiraling, which is such a big thing because often it's that all or nothing trigger where you eat something and then that spiral. So being able to stop yourself spiraling is such a massive piece for a lot of people. Or Christina, who found that the method that I offered helped her stop having such intense cravings. And just after a few days as well, which again, just tweaking certain things can make such a difference to someone's relationship with food. And here an example from Steph, who was able to resist the urge to emotionally eat, even when there was a real trigger there. And honestly, I feel so lucky to have supported so many people through this process to the point where they do feel that peace and calm around food and able to do things like not get triggered or be able to get on with their day without really thinking about food. So let's jump into the training then. So I want to start off by talking about these three major mistakes that women make when trying to stop their binging. So mistake number one, and this is kind of what I've already been talking about, is that people just focus on the food. So they might feel like it's a really logical fix. So eat less equals no more binges, right? So if you've ever eaten like the perfect lunch or the perfect breakfast, but still ended up binging later, you know that that's not so simple, is it? Because when you focus on only on what you're eating, it kind of misses the point of like, why are you eating, or why are you triggered by that, or why does eating X cause you to have a binge or feel totally out of control? And also, when you become very restrictive with your eating, then as soon as life gets busy or you go on holiday or I don't know, it's Christmas, then everything unravels and feels out of control again. Mistake number two is just going for therapy. Now, I am all for therapy and I think it's brilliant. But what happens in therapy is that a lot of people just focus on the kind of underlying like understanding of their past, which can really, really help. So maybe you have done this, maybe you've learned to do things like journaling or to breathe and to feel your feelings. But if you're not also working on your relationship with food and actually what it is you're eating and when you're eating, then you're never going to fix the problem, because you have to be working on those things side by side. You need the tools to work on, in the moment when the binge urge hits, rather than just sort of going and digging up the past. And the final mistake that I see people making is just focusing on mindset. Now, mindset work can be extremely empowering, but again, it can't override a hungry body or a dysregulated nervous system. You can't affirmation your way out of a binge, because you need to also understand the urge. Like, why do you have that urge to binge in the first place? And this is what I've noticed working in this space for quite a few years now, is that quite a few of the methods out there that you see just focus on one of these three elements, sometimes two of the elements, but you need to bring all three of these elements together to actually create lasting change and get to the point where you have totally healed your relationship with food. Because if the approach is incomplete, then again, you feel like you've failed because you feel like you've not been working hard enough. So the truth is that stopping binge eating for good takes more than just one piece of that puzzle. And binging doesn't just come from one place. It's about what it is you're eating, but it's also your mindset, your beliefs around food, your core beliefs as well, and also whether or not you're using the food as an emotional coping mechanism, or whether you've got this dysregulated nervous system. And that's why the food and body freedom method brings all three of these pieces together, a bit like this. So you've got the food and nutritional element. And this is almost like your biological foundation. You need to learn how to nourish your body properly, balance your blood sugar levels, and work with your hunger hormones, not against them. So by working on all those elements and appetite regulation, like really understanding how to eat when you're hungry, but crucially to stop when you're full, by doing all that, that's really going to help with the urge to binge. And then it's really important to work on the mindset and beliefs elements. So this is almost like your mental reset. It's really important that you shift your thoughts, your beliefs, that inner dialogue that keeps you stuck, and start seeing yourself and also food in a totally different way. And then finally is thinking about emotional coping tools. So this is almost like your emotional regulation system. So you need to be able to build tools to manage stress, to soothe the overwhelm, and also support your nervous system so that you're not always turning to food when life gets a little bit tricky or there's those ups and downs which happen to everyone. So those are those three pieces, and the three pieces, like pieces of a puzzle, work together. So the combination of food, mindset, and emotions is what makes the food and body freedom method work. And it also means that this works on a lasting outcome. So a lasting change in your relationship with food so that you can finally be free of the binge eating, the overeating, the emotional eating, and feeling totally out of control around food. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is why binge eating isn't a willpower problem and what's actually going on in your body and brain. So you have probably heard this like 1,000 times, where a lot of the advice out there is to restrict what you're eating, but also crucially to cut down on the binge foods that you might be eating. And for some people that does work for a little bit of time, but most of the time you go back to the binge, and often the binge is more out of control than it was before. And so people often come back to blaming their willpower, blaming their discipline. And I know I did it for years, thinking if only I can have more willpower, then I'll really get this sorted. But there is so much more going on than just willpower. So ask yourself whether any of these thoughts sound familiar to you. So maybe you've asked yourself, where's my off button? Like, why can't I just switch that off button? Or I end up ruining everything. Or, is there actually something wrong with me? Like, why can't I just stop? Why don't I have more willpower? Am I actually broken? Now, these are all thoughts that I had regularly. And if you have them as well, you're definitely not alone. So this is where people kind of get to the point where they're like, I just need more willpower and then everything will be okay. But you see, binge eating is not a personal failure. It's actually a survival response. And that's because your body is wired literally to protect you from starvation. And this obviously goes back many, many, many thousands of years, where this was really important back in the day, because if there was a famine or if there was a situation where there wasn't so much food, your body is wired to help you survive and it wants you to eat more food. So a binge is actually your body fighting back against that restriction, both from a biological perspective and also from a psychological perspective. So I just want to explore quickly about what happens to your brain and your body when you restrict what you're eating and when you hide your binge foods. So this is the biological response to restriction. And basically, here's what happens. So for whatever reason, you decide at the very beginning, and this could go back many, many years. For a lot of people, they started their first diet when they were 15 or 16. So they start restricting food in one way or another, whether you cut down on the amount of meals you're eating or cut down on calories, or you start counting macros, or you cut out complete food groups. And what happens? So this is what keeps us coming back, is you have this initial feeling of control and delight. So you cut down on your calories and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I can do this. I'm actually really good at this. And then perhaps you have a little bit of weight loss and you think, oh, this is working. This is brilliant. But then at some point, you'll notice that you start to get hungrier, and this is because our hunger hormones start getting impacted. This is really normal. Again, it's that biological response to restriction. It's your body literally telling you to go eat more food. But these kind of turn into cravings and maybe a little bit of an obsession with food. Like the amount of people who diet or go on healthy eating plans, they start focusing on like recipes or like, things that they can't necessarily eat or they're not allowed to eat. You become hyper focused, hyper fixated on food because your brain has just gone into that survival mode. Your hunger hormones creep up. But what's interesting is your fullness hormones go down. So it's much harder to feel full. And then eventually you give in to those cravings and you're like, oh, well, one cookie's not going to hurt or one packet of crisps isn't going to hurt. And then what happens, because you've eaten something that is bad or off limits, then it turns into a full-blown binge. You eat absolutely everything in sight. Sometimes you just feel totally wild and out of control. That leads to you feeling guilty and like a total failure. And then you start the process all over again. You say to yourself, it doesn't matter. I'll start again on Monday, or I'll start again tomorrow. That's okay. So you end up very stuck in this binge restrict cycle. And what's interesting is it's actually the restriction that leads to the binge and not the other way around. Yes, you get stuck in the cycle, but the very first step in the cycle is that desire, that initial diet or feeling like I'm going to start restricting my food. So that's what happens biologically. And then psychologically, so I always think this is such a good analogy. So if I told you, don't think of a pink elephant, what's the first thing you think of? Obviously, it's a pink elephant, right? This is exactly how your brain responds to restriction, because if you tell yourself, I can't eat chocolate, I can't eat sweets, I'm not allowed to eat crisps, what starts to happen is your brain literally wants those more. It's almost like, that pushing back against being told what you can't do. And this actually triggers something called the forbidden fruit effect, where you literally end up craving absolutely everything you've been told you can't have. So suddenly the pizza sounds more appealing, as do the donuts and the hot dogs and the cake and the cupcakes and the chips and everything that you've been told that you can't eat. But then crucially, what happens when you do eat that food, which inevitably you do from the biological response, you give into your cravings, then you feel super guilty and you feel like, oh gosh, I've ruined absolutely everything. You feel like a failure. So there's this like real like negative emotional impact that happens afterwards. And these thoughts that go around your head, often that leads to a bigger binge. And then you start the cycle all over again because you think, right, that's it. I'm not going to have breakfast tomorrow. And you start the restriction once again. Now, if you take nothing else away from watching this free training, I want you to know that you are not broken. Binging is a learned survival pattern, okay? But what's so good about that is what's learned can be unlearned. And that's really important. Yes, it's important to know you don't need more willpower, but what you can do is try a different approach. So with the right tools, the right support, the right approach, and the right method, you can actually break free from this cycle. You just need to know how to do it. So if binging isn't a willpower problem and it isn't about you being broken, then what is it about then? So it's about, first of all, meeting your needs. So from biological perspective, emotional perspective, and a cognitive perspective, so mindset perspective. So that's what you need to do. You need to have something that addresses the biology. So eating the right food in the right way. And when I say right, I don't mean that there are certain foods that you need to eat. It's just making sure that you are eating enough and nourishing your body. You want something that actually supports your body from an emotional perspective. So nervous system regulation, coping mechanisms that don't include food. And then also about shifting those deep mindset and belief patterns as well. And when you work on all these three elements, just like those pieces in the puzzle, that's when you have a solution that's actually going to lead to healing your relationship with food for good. So just like Tara, so she's a mum of one and runs her own business. And she had spent years and years and years and years trying to fix her binge eating. She tried dieting. She tried being better, quote unquote, and honestly felt that willpower was the missing piece. But nothing had stuck over the years. Just nothing had helped her actually overcome her binging. And then she started using the food and body freedom method. And what she found is she could better tune in to her hunger and fullness cues, which also meant that she was better able to identify the difference between real, like physical, biological hunger and emotional hunger. So now she's finding that food is so much less chaotic and she's back in charge. And I love that. How amazing is that? Okay, so my final training point is to talk about control. Now, this is such an important point because often people cling to more rules, thinking, I just need to be more disciplined, or I just need to find the right diet, or I just need to be a bit more strict with myself. If that's you, then this is totally for you, 100%, because I want to take a closer look at what control is actually doing. Now, often people come at this thinking that if they have more control, that's going to give them more peace. But it's so not true, because the stricter your rules are, the more you worry about breaking them. And the more you try to be really perfect, the more that pressure builds to continue with that perfection. And then when you do mess up, you have that opposite thought where you're like, oh, sod it, I may as well just eat the whole lot now because I've made one little mistake. What's the point in trying? I'll start again tomorrow. So the guilt fuels that kind of the binge and the restriction as well. So you have this real pressure to be perfect, but it's impossible to continuously be perfect. And then ironically, when you try and control eating to the point of perfection, actually that starts to control your life. So you look at this list, and some of this may really sound familiar to you, where you've got that constant food noise. You literally can't switch off. You're constantly thinking about food. It's like, how was I today? To the point where you're falling asleep thinking, did I do okay? Should I be better tomorrow? How can I get back on track? You know, waking up in the morning thinking, okay, today I'm going to be good. Today is going to be the day that I really crack it. So you have a brain that is filled with these rules, but like guilt and constant fear that you're going to break the rules. And like, what's that going to mean? You're constantly wishing that you could be better. And it feels more like a prison than anything else, because you're ruled by this constant need for control. And ultimately, more control ends up creating the opposite of what you were hoping. It ends up creating more chaos because you are constantly thinking about food. You're swinging between being good and being bad. You're stuck in that binge restrict cycle that I showed you earlier. You're never feeling relaxed around food. So control doesn't calm things down. It actually creates more out of control feelings. So you feel more out of control ultimately. And again, you don't need more control, but what you do need is to bring those three pieces of the puzzle together and focus on food, mindset and beliefs, and emotional coping tools. And another thing that helps, like enormously, and this is one of the first things I work on with my clients, is something called nutritional rehabilitation. So it works, it's a structure that works in harmony with your body. And this is something that I teach inside the Food and Body Freedom Method. It's about helping you regulate your hunger hormones and your fullness hormones. It's about stabilizing your blood sugar level. It's about rebuilding trust in your appetite. So crucially, you're able to eat when you're hungry, but really importantly, able to stop eating when you're full. And it's when you pull those things together that you can stop binging, stop emotional eating and overeating, all obviously without relying on willpower or having to be more strict around food. And just like Steph, and I love this comment from her actually, because she's got to the point where those food decisions feel really easy. And it's not because she's restricting, and that's obviously really important, but it's because she's checking in with her body. So she's saying that she's able to say no to a sausage roll, not because she was being good or because she was on a diet or a healthy eating plan. It's because she decided she just didn't want it. She was able to go inwards, check with herself, and decide that actually that's not what she wanted in that moment of time. And for me, that is true freedom, when you're able to actually do that. So how do you actually stop that out of control feeling, which may feel incredibly familiar to you? The thing is, what we know from everything that I've shared so far is you don't need the right diet, more willpower, or more rules. But what you do need is to pull those three pieces together. So you do need to focus on food and nutrition, so your biology and behaviors. It's important to focus on your psychology, mindset and beliefs, and also those mind-body tools where you're focusing on emotions and nervous system. And all by bringing all of those together, that's how you find proper peace and calm around food. And then that's exactly how I designed the Food and Body Freedom Method. So here is where I would love to present to you this 3-step roadmap to end binges and eating chaos. So just to tell you a little bit about how that Food and Body Freedom Method pulls those three pieces of the puzzle together to actually get to the point where you have lasting peace and calm around food. So I want to show you exactly how we stop that binging, that overeating, that food chaos for good. And we work on these 3 steps. So the very first thing we do is we uncover what's actually really driving your binging. So not just the habits, but also the deeper patterns and emotional triggers that may be going on. Then we balance your body by using what I just shared with you, that nutritional rehabilitation. So that's balancing your blood sugar levels, stopping the binge urges before they even start. And that's so crucial, because if you're able to do that, it means that the next step in the process is much easier, because then we work on rewiring. And that's where we apply what we call a cognitive emotional reset. So we use these psychology-based tools to help you break free from binging, overeating, and food chaos. But it's really important to help you change how you think and feel about food. So this is where we're working on the mindset and beliefs, but also the emotional element, to look at emotional coping tools and what it is you're actually doing, so that you can have better ways of coping with stress and life's ups and downs. So I want to break this down a little bit so you can understand exactly what we end up doing. So this part is so important, and lots of people skip this because they think they know what's going on. But actually, we really want to understand what is going on. So we want to understand the real reason behind your relationship with food. So we want to look beneath the surface. We really dig deep and we understand in a bit more detail, like what's actually triggering your binging or your overeating. What are the patterns that are being played out? What are the habits? What's happened in the past around your appetite regulation or dietary chaos, because it's only when we understand that we can move forward. So we want you to really understand why you feel so out of control, and crucially, so you can change it. Because we want you to get to the point where you say, oh, okay, that makes sense. I understand why I was doing all those things. Now, if you are interested, there is, you can complete my food noise quiz, and this helps you really understand what the hidden reasons are why you feel so out of control around food. In the comments below, or at least in the description section below, there is a link to the food noise quiz. Just click on that. It's totally free to complete, and that will give you a better sense of what's going on for you and why you're feeling so out of control around food. Now, the next step is to balance. And this is really important. So we're using this idea of nutritional rehabilitation to stabilize everything. So we're stabilizing everything internally. So it could be around your hormones, hunger hormones, fullness hormones. We want to balance your blood sugar levels. We want to stop the binge urges, or the urge to emotionally eat, before it actually happens. And this helps you develop a much more kind of clear-headed approach to food. You feel much more peace and calm around food, with less cravings as well. And it's when you're feeling a lot more balanced and calm that you can do the next step in the process. And this is where you are literally rewiring your relationship with food. So we work first on mindset and beliefs, and secondly on your emotions. So that's the cognitive emotional reset. So we're using a lot of psychology-based tools, nervous system regulation tools, to really help you change how you think and feel around food. And this is where you feel really calm and confident. So not only do you feel clear-headed around food, but you're able to think and feel differently around food. So you're not constantly reaching for food to cope with everything that's going on. And I want to introduce you to Shanaz. Now, Shanaz had actually been struggling with binge eating for 40 years and had tried absolutely everything before we started working together. And to say that she was at her wit's end is the understatement of the year. She honestly felt totally broken. But what's amazing is that literally just a few weeks in to working together using the food and body freedom method, everything started to shift. She started eating based on her mood and hunger, not rules and guilt. She had stopped grazing all day. All that kind of mental noise, that food noise around food, started to really quieten down. And now she has fully recovered from binge eating. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that it has literally changed her life, which is amazing. So, are you ready to get your life back when you finally stop that out of control eating? So you can drop me a hell yeah in the comments below if that sounds like you. Now, enrollment is now open for Food and Body Wisdom Mastery. And this is 100% for you if you feel like you're ready to feel normal around food, and you're ready, like yesterday, to get to that point. Now, Food and Body Wisdom Mastery is my one-on-one coaching. So this is where we work together over 12 sessions via Zoom. And this is all about helping you build a healthy and peaceful relationship with food and your body. So body image is often an important part of this process. So you will learn how to eat in a way that supports your physical and emotional well-being. There's no rules, guilt, or obsession. Now, with this, the very first session is a deep dive session. So it's actually a double session. So really you get 13 sessions where we really dig deep and uncover everything that we talked about in that uncover section. We really understand why things are feeling so out of control right now. And what I do with that is that I create a personalized program to make sure that we focus on all the right elements to get you to the point where you're feeling calm and in charge and confident around food by the end of the 12 sessions. Now, you get loads of extra support along the way. So I have lots of online videos and other resources and loads of things to help support you in the process. I have a whole like coaching platform as well that helps you through this process with different tools that we use every single week. So if you are someone that has been stuck in that cycle of emotional eating, binge eating, purging, restriction, or body shame, then this program is absolutely for you. And I have had over the years like so much positive feedback for people who have used this method to heal their relationship with food. And I just want to share a few comments and feedback that people have written. So people saying, they've gone few weeks without binging or emotional eating, something that they really honestly thought was never going to be possible. Others feeling that they've had the urges, but now they have the tools to actually respond in the moment so they can move on without that guilt or spiral. People able to enjoy balanced and satisfying meals without second guessing what they're doing. And I think one of the biggest shifts that I see overall is like being able to stop eating when they're full, even when there's food on their plate. And that to me is such a big change for a lot of people. And these kinds of things are what happens when you have the right support, the right method. Now, I just wanted to share some screenshots of feedback that I got from someone just a few weeks ago. So this is someone that I worked with a year ago now. And she sent me a really, really long email, but I just picked out a few screenshots that I just thought was so interesting. So the middle one there, like she actually came to me asking why she couldn't stick to her regime. So she was really into sort of healthy eating and eating really well, going to the gym. And what she was finding is that it used to kind of trigger a lot of binging and overeating. And I love this, is that she realized that actually it was the regime that was the problem, and it was a tight control during the week that was causing a backlash and binge on special occasions. She's also said that now she's much more aware of her hunger and fullness, which is amazing because she was really totally out of touch with those. And then saying that she feels like she's getting fuller and not eating as much at every meal as before. And that's because we really helped her with appetite regulation to help her tune into hunger and fullness. And then this is some lovely feedback from Ruby, who again I worked with about a year ago as well, actually. And yes, it must have been a year. So she said that she's not binged in a year now. She's able to eat whatever she wants, doesn't restrict herself. And like what she thought she would never be able to do is like wearing a bikini on holiday and not feeling self-conscious. And actually part of her story, which is just really lovely, is that on that particular holiday, she got engaged to her boyfriend, which was just such lovely news for me to hear. And then some more feedback here, being able to talk themselves down after being triggered or not using food to cope with their emotions, being able to focus on like that gratitude for what their body does rather than how their body looks, or being able to order a takeaway and not binge. So all of these things are things that these women thought that they would never be able to do. And here they are doing all these things. They're healing their relationship with food and their body image and able to feel so much more normal, quote unquote, around food, which is just amazing. So if this is all resonating with you and you're like, oh my gosh, I absolutely need to work on my relationship with food and body image, then if you look in the description below, there is a link to book your call. We have a quick 30-minute catch up to find out a little bit more about your situation, where it is you want to get to. And it's really about chatting with me to see if I can help you bridge that gap between where you are now and where you want to get to, and I can tell you a bit more about coaching and how it works. So you can just go to the description and click on that link below. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, that's all very well, but I'm actually not quite at that stage of wanting to work one-on-one, that's totally fine. What I would love to do is share with you my binge-free method. So this is a mini course. It is it's a kind of quick and straightforward course, but with the most amazing results. So if you feel like you're at that stage where you're not quite ready or needing one-on-one support, but you just need a little bit of information and kind of, a process, the binge-free method is absolutely for you. So this will help you stop binging and stop overeating and give you this same process that I've talked about, the uncover, reset and rewire process. So it takes you through each of those 3 steps, but it is a mini course where you go through it by yourself. So if you are interested, that's the link there, but I've also put it in the description below. So so either click the link to book your call, or you can go and do the binge-free method. And there is also the link below to complete the food noise quiz. So thank you so much for being here today. If you've got any questions, just reach out to me. I always answer, whether on Instagram, whether on YouTube, or just if you want to email me. And I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.